What we can't teach you is how you've been dealing with people over the years that you've been dealing with them, making them feel good, making them feel welcome, making them feel that they want to come back. This is more important to us as brand owners than you knowing about movement in a watch that we can teach you.
Okay, welcome to Lock Stock FM, where we feature entrepreneurs, provocateurs and thought leaders from around the world. Today we've got Alberto Barbieri in the house. Welcome to my new home and to Lock Stock FM.
Thanks very much, Pacha.
It's really good to have you on board. And I know this is your first podcast, right?
It is first time.
You must be extremely excited.
A bit nervous, actually.
Yeah, really. Wow, that's a first. So I've known you for a long time. I would never expect you to be a little nervous.
Well,
So could you give us a little introduction about yourself, where you come from?
Can do.
Couple of guests?
Yes. I was born in London, raised in London.
Yep.
My father was Italian, my mother Spanish. They met in London.
Okay. Romantic story?
Actually, yes. It actually turns out to be very romantic because they met. Back in those days, my dad came over in the 60s from Italy, and you needed a work visa to come there. So Europe wasn't there. So he managed to land a job, having not left his village. He came from a very small village in northern Italy.
Yep.
And came to London, got a job as a washer-upper in a coffee shop restaurant, and worked his way up, started learning a bit of English, became a manager. And then my mum came and joined the restaurant in 1971. They met. She was a waitress of his, and they got married, and here I am. And then actually some time later, I ended up buying those restaurants.
Oh, wow.
Which was a really, really nice story. And unfortunately, my dad passed away, quite soon after I managed to acquire them. But there was 5 or 6 coffee shop restaurants in London. And I remember vividly one of them having a photo. There was a photograph on our living room wall of the wedding reception they had in one of the restaurants. And then the day that I actually acquired them and took them over, I went to the spot and I saw exactly where they had their wedding reception. It was
quite emotional, yeah?
It was emotional.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And you have brothers or sisters?
I've got a younger sister, 7 years younger than me.
Okay.
She lives in London.
Okay, so same different father or same?
No. Same mother, father.
Yeah.
And she lives with my mum. My mum's still alive.
Okay, great.
They're
And they're in London. So you the family is hospitality. You come from a long heritage of hospitality.
Yeah, my grandfather, my dad's side, my uncles, they all had restaurants, worked in restaurants. But that wasn't really the path that I took. I went through the whole school process, and I started working in, let's say, a fancy club to pay my way. This was Iceni on Whitehall Street.
Were you schooled in England? You went to school?
I was, yeah. I went to school. I went to London Oratory in Fulham. That's where I did the secondary school, and then I went to college in Clapham and university Middlesex, and then I went to law school afterwards. So while I was at university, I was working in clubs as a doorman to support my way. I was studying during the day, working at night at Iceni, which was a real fancy spot in London at the time, over 3 floors, right in the middle of Mayfair.
What year was that? You're going to give away your age here.
There's no divided that these days. What year was that? That was early 90s. Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this now for 30. I'm 48. I've been doing this for 31 years. I was not even 18 when I started working there.
Was your first job in the hot pot? Not the hot pot. Not the pot wash. The pot wash. Yeah.
So I did all of that, and I was working in Saturday jobs and stuff. I did all of that as I was growing up. But let's say the first proper job where I was earning proper money, working 3-4 nights a week, which in those days £10 an hour, compared to the money that I was earning stacking shelves or something like that before going to uni, was actually a sizable amount.
Yeah.
So I started working in this club called Iceni, and they took me, actually not for my experience or anything, but because I speak Spanish.
Yeah.
And they were opening that summer, so 3 months after I joined, they were opening an Iceni in Puerto Banús.
Okay.
So they took me on the understanding that I could speak Spanish, and then they said, look, I mean, during the summer holidays, I was off from college. Do you fancy going over to Spain for 3 months? And I did. And I met a lot of VIPs, as in those times, it was flooded. And when I came back, they put me on the door of the VIP in Iceni, and then that was it, really. That's where I started establishing myself in the nightlife business. And I stayed. I carried on, and Iceni closed, and then a couple of the owners of Iceni invested into China White on Air Street, the original one.
Is that where we met the first time?
I think we did.
I think it was China White, right? Because I started as a DJ, and I have a background. I was the first pot wash as well. So I worked at BJ Express. And I was a waiter. I was earning £3.18 an hour, actually, back in those. But that was 97, 90, something like this, whilst I was doing the other business. But we were making tips on the side, so we make a little bit more, maybe make £100 a night, something like this. But yeah, so China White is where we first met, and you were running the VIP, right?
I was running the door. So I was.
So you transitioned from kind of doing the VIP stuff to doing the security.
Actually, it was more or less the other way around. I actually started as security. I was straight up doorman, looking after a particular area that they put me in. Sometimes it would be helping the guys outside park all the fancy cars, whatever it was, really.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it. There was no trouble. I mean, the odd thing, but then by the time I left or I seen he closed and I went to China White, I was not a doorman anymore. I was standing on the door, the filtering the gas, checking the tables coming in, and I did that for a good 6 years.
Okay, and that's where we met, because I started working DJing for Nick House at China White on a Wednesday night, and I remember I was a warm-up DJ, so I'd play from 10 till 12 on Wednesday night. And for people listening, watching that don't know China White, that was like the spot, wasn't it? It was, everything was happening on Air Street those days.
It was incredible. And I mean, a lot of the people that I bump into now, there was a big wave of the London bankers that ended up coming to live in Dubai, and I bump into them even now, and there's always with a big smile, because
From China White.
Yeah, because they their informative years were there, great times. And
it's funny how those long-term relationships are based from like a feel-good moment in people's lives, right? And they associate those feel-good memories with the person that they knew from that venue or whatever, and then it just basically lasts forever, and people forget how quickly they get old, and they look back to those times. So we had the same kind of thing in Mint. I've built up so many relationships in Mint Shanghai, just being there, being the DJ. Obviously, I wasn't running the door, but I was kind of like the man at Mint, even though I was always drunk. I built up just so many friendships, and now wherever I go anywhere in the world, because everyone's kind of like dispersed out, I know someone.
Yes,
in one of those clubs.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thousands of people that crossed the front door of China White. I mean, especially on a Wednesday night, it was a mix of crowd that I've not seen it replicated again. It was special.
Do you think that's because we're getting older? Do you think that actually is the case? No, I feel the same. I'm that night.
Look, maybe you're right. I mean, everyone lives in their own moment. And I think the youngsters of today have their own reflection of, what was a great moment for them. But for us, I think it was true. There were these distractions that we were talking about on the way up here, the phones and stuff. I mean, that wasn't there. So, it was certainly not to the level that they're being used at the moment. I think people just enjoyed their time so much more because they were in it. It wasn't, right, before anything happens, I've got to take a photo of this and that hadn't come yet.
So you touched on something really cool in the car, which I thought was very nostalgic when we were talking about the future of, and it's something we can talk a little bit later on in the podcast, the future of marketing and how I envisage it with VR. And then we started saying, well, imagine what it was like before social media. And you told me the story of how you used to send out invites and promotional material basically to people's addresses.
Absolutely. Our reservations manager would take a trip to the post office, buy books of first-class stamps. We'd get a nice card made up, put some effort, go to the local stationery store and get something made in advance with a nice envelope addressed to you and put in the post. I mean, that's how we sent stuff out. That was our marketing of a new night or a new club or a new something.
It's incredible to think how much that's changed just in the short 20 years that we've had. I mean, even in when MySpace first started coming around, I remember people promoting a lot of stuff on there. I was kind of making music then, so I was trying to promote it. And then Facebook, and then when the mobiles came, that was the big change, wasn't it? And
it was.
You just said that it was very cool when people were in the nightclub and they weren't spending all the time looking at their phone. It's like a totally different vibe.
Yes, it was absolutely. You're engrossed in it. And even to one thing, I think I noticed a big change as well when the smoking law came into play, when you couldn't smoke in a club anymore.
Do you think that was good or bad?
I think that kind of affected the way that you would behave, because at some point there was always 100 people outside smoking. So the energy in the room, like you'd have to really play with.
Interesting, because there were the areas that people set up for them.
Yes, exactly. They were outside. So, I mean, when everybody was in the club, everyone was smoking in the club. I mean, I don't smoke, so and in a way I kind of appreciate it.
Yeah.
I was on the door, it didn't really matter. But the point was, when I went downstairs, it was like, oh my God, the smoke everywhere. And when it stopped, you really felt like, again, a shift in energy and vibe, because at some point there were always people outside. So you'd have to overpack the club on the understanding that there was a percentage of your capacity was smoking.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Weird, yeah.
During COVID, I was in Bali, and they had these, because in Jakarta, Jakarta is the capital of Indonesia, right? And it sets the rules for all the different islands, but there's so many islands. I think there's something like 1,800 islands or something crazy. Don't quote me on the number, I have to come back to that, but there's thousands of islands. So it's very difficult to police all the different islands. They're all quite religious, and they all have their own mayor or governor of each island. And in Bali, they overlooked a lot of the rules for COVID, so they didn't shut the clubs. But part of the deal with Central Jakarta for allowing them to kind of overlook it was they did not allow anyone to take any photos in the club, no videos, no social media. So when you went in, everyone had to put their phone in.
Interesting.
So they all put it behind the bar, and obviously a lot of people, I know I don't want to put my phone because I've like got so much crypto and stuff on. So lucky I'm a DJ, I could go in with my phone, but most people, in fact, everyone apart from staff, had their phones taken at the front door, and it was like that for a year or so. And it was amazing, because these people, suddenly you've got all these people in the club, and particularly it's the girls, because the girls are always sat there and they're just like, they're going for Instagram, because they're not really interested in the guys that are buying them drinks or whatever. And that was quite interesting to see it in Bali. And that was kind of the last time I DJ'd, actually. It was kind of the end of I was kind of just holding on by dear life to my DJ career at that point on the last bit. Okay, cool. So the nightlife in London. So we were in China White's when we met, and then you moved on to Movida. Did you?
No. I never actually did any. The only Movida episode I had was here in Dubai. There was a Movida in Dubai.
Oh, really?
Didn't really. Yeah, I didn't do anything in Movida in London. I mean, I was there when it opened, and it was, it was quite a big deal. It was a big club, and because
you were really influential in the scene. Everyone knew who you were. China White's was the main club. You were the man on the front door. Wherever you were connected, you knew everyone that was spending money in the clubs. You knew who the people were. So all the clubs that were opening, they wanted you involved, basically.
Well, I was lucky that when I left China White, I joined ventures that were part mine. Okay. So I didn't have to at that point. There was the Pangaea episode, and when actually towards the tail end of my China White life, we had the original Aura, the first round of Aura. Let's say there were 10 of us there, 10 partners, and we opened that as a sort of dinner dance type of spot, intimate, as you know, the venue. And then Pangaea, that had already opened, didn't do too well, let's say, for the first 3-4 months. And then we joined the partners that were already there, finished off, let's say, a little bit of refurbishment and opened it up, and we had a really good time. Pangaea was also very, very good for us.
Pangaea kind of took the Wednesday nights.
Exactly. Well, that was it. That was the big thing. I even took a couple of staff from China White at that point. I mean, I think China White was, in its, let's say, movement stage, where it had already had its and other things were coming in and taking over. And then I think then eventually the hotel kind of refurbished, and then they moved site, and I think that China White by Libertine still exists, but it's not the same. It's not the same thing at all. So then after China White, there was the whole Pangaea period. That was good fun.
That was Pangaea on, what was the name of the road?
Clarges Street,
and then it changed to Vendôme, did it?
Yeah, we were out by then.
Yeah, so there's some of the things. I want to hear some funky stories. Now, there's lots of funky stories that go on in nightclubs, right? Obviously, some that can be talked about, some that can't be talked about. What was the most difficult experience you had when you were working at China White's on the front door?
Well, there were many moments. I think every venue had its own thing going on, but I mean, nightclubs, they're known for, gangsters going in there and glamour models and footballers and stuff. It was a real cesspit, if you want to call it.
But you were you were a big boy, weren't you? You were like working out you were
No, I was. I mean,
quite intimidating presence on the front door.
I mean, I would say I didn't really give too much away, right?
Yeah.
So I tried not to get too involved with the guests that were there. So no one really knew me so much. And I think that mystique kind of maybe helped me through the years.
Yes, I think so.
I wouldn't really socialize with guests. I'd see them whenever they would come into the venue, and I was as friendly as I could be because guests, and we're in that business, right? We're in hospitality. And if I would go out to a restaurant, I'd see them and I'd go and shake hands, and and that was fine. But that was it. I wouldn't call them. I mean, I made many friendships, but we never really got to a point where we would agree to go to the movies together or agree to go for dinner together. I tried to avoid that, and I tried to do it very consciously. It wasn't something. It was, I just didn't want to get too close to people because I didn't want it to affect my job. I was standing on the door. My job was to filter. It was to charge people. It was to negotiate fees for tables and stuff like that. I didn't want to put myself and my partners or my bosses when I was working for people in a position where, well, you've just bought me dinner. Now I feel weird having to ask you for money. So on purpose, it was my job and I wanted to do it correctly. And I think that people somehow respected me for it. I mean, the goal for me was, if I had to say you couldn't come in, I wanted to make you feel that fair enough. I understand why. It wasn't like, oh, what's that guy there? Why is he being rude, or why? I'll just try to do it in a polite way. I mean, it could be, weren't dressed properly, or, too many guys in the group, or we were full, whatever it was, whatever reason there was, I just tried to do it in a nice way.
Because rejection is always kind of difficult, isn't it? A lot of people get very upset about it.
They can do. Yeah, they can do. And being in London and understanding the dynamics of it, and this family and that family.
You never know who you're talking to also.
Never know who you're talking to. And I've always lived my life by that. I mean, treat everybody as nice as you can, because you don't know who they are. And it's not for any fear aspect. It's just be respectful. You don't know what people are going through either. So yeah, I tried not to be the typical door idiot where look up and down and say I tried to give people a reason, and I may have exerted myself speaking a lot more than I needed to, or spending time with a particular guest. But I mean, tough moments there were. I mean, in Marbella, no word of a lie, somebody was rejected. I had to reject somebody because he had too much to drink. Went to the boot of his car, pulled out a gun and put it in my face.
Really?
Yeah, and that's that happened there. And I was working with a guy called Big John, and I don't know if you go back that far, but he used to run the door at Emporium.
Right.
Do you remember hearing about Emporium?
I think so. Yeah.
It was around the times of China, right? I mean, I would say even before. And
Emporium was. I think that's where I met Danny. Remember Danny Healy?
Yes.
I think that's where I met Danny Healy.
Maybe. There was another club at the top of the road called Attica.
Yeah.
But anyway, and he used to run there, and he was actually in Marbella with me at the time. And I got very frightened. I was young. I was 18 years old, and you don't expect that stuff to happen. That was probably the scariest moment. But there were many moments that could have gone off. I mean, at Aura, we were famous for our Sunday night, which was the longest running hip-hop night in London. And, hip-hop nights and clubs over here in Dubai are very different to hip-hop clubs and nights over here in London, right? And you're talking about gangs as well. You're talking about like East London, South London, and footballers, and therefore people trying to rob watches outside. And, it was tense, in a, I'm not call it a nice way, but it was bubbling.
Did it give you like a high? Did you feel like?
I always got a high of watching people having fun. That's my fun, actually. When even last night, we celebrated our 5th birthday here at One Oak, and I don't know where 5 years have gone, but I was looking around the room and watching people with their hands up in the air, just enjoying themselves. And I think, you know what? This is why I am still doing this job, because I love that. I love people. I love people showing people a good time. Yeah, if they go to the restaurant, they have a great meal, and they come back and tell me that, I feel proud, because I know that that's something that we've created ourselves.
So that's an interesting segue, actually, because you talk about London and Marbella, kind of similar kind of vibe, where there's a lot of gangs, a lot of gangsters, people acting. That's kind of like a UK thing, where I just don't think the policing is strong enough. And then you come to Dubai, it's just totally different, isn't it?
100%. You can't compare. I mean, funny enough, yesterday we did an interview with Sky News. They're running a segment on on why do I think so many Brits are coming over to Dubai, and that these were part of the things, and then they obviously wanted to put an edge on the club thing. They were in one night last night, and I told them, I think that age, actually looking back, 21 compared to 18 makes actually a big difference. And London is obviously 18 to get into clubs, and here it's 21. And I think that you already eliminate a lot of potential issues when you're just at 18 finding yourself. You could overdo it on alcohol maybe a little bit more than possibly if you 21 when you've maybe been and done that. So I think that there really is a big difference from, let's say, clubs over here in general, life in general, and what I left in London. And I left London 10 years. I've been 10 years now in Dubai, and I've been to visit a few times, and I must say that I find it very difficult to reconnect with the place. I never thought I'd leave. Born and raised. I had businesses there. I was doing well. Wife and kids. And it was literally a one day of from another. It was like, I should try something else. We came to Dubai on holiday, and for many people, I think they tell the same story. You connected with it. You're over here in the winter. It's pissing cold, raining, whatever it is, back at home. And you think, okay, well, what am I actually doing that for? I mean, this place is lovely. It's clean. You hear about all the safety factors. We've got 2 kids, so do we really want them growing up like that? And that was a big drive for me to come over here. And I knew that I could do. I've always been able to visualize things. That's how I've managed to get where I've got to. And I've really accomplished very little. I think I could have probably done a lot more. And the reason maybe why I haven't is that I always wanted to control my thing, like do my thing, like be there every night and believe but try to convince myself that I can do it better than that person, so therefore I should do it.
Just so you know, like, I think almost everyone that I talk to, and myself included, we all feel, I've done well, but I could have done more. So everyone kind of feels like this all the time. And I think any ambitious person, a successful person, thinks like that, because enough is never enough. But actually, when you look back, you think, I'm pretty happy. Yeah, I'm done pretty well. Yeah. And with regards to kind of London, it's not got any better, has it? It's only getting worse.
No, as far as my sister's there, and I kind of feel sad. I mean, how sad is it that you just you have to think twice if you're going to wear that watch to go out, or you're going to go there this evening.
Unbelievable, isn't it? And it's the polar difference here in Dubai, the government style. Obviously, it's run by it's run by kind of like a family, almost like a dictatorship, but it's not really a dictatorship, is it? Mm-hmm. You're right. Yeah, I'm doing it. But in UK, it's just, for me, it's just like socialism gone completely wrong.
That's too far. It's too much. I mean, and you go look at what Dubai managed to accomplish with COVID. I mean, everyone's got their theory on it, but I think they dealt with it particularly well. Only the fact that if they told you by 11 o'clock you're home, the streets were empty. There was none of these people revolting, I'm going on strike, or I'm going to do that. I mean, you start thinking about doing stuff like that, you know what's coming. And
it's too easy to get away with stuff in England.
Too easy, so people do it. I mean, literally just walking into places and just taking what they want and walking out because they know that nothing's going to happen to them. Yeah. I mean,
because I think most humans, I've got a couple of viewpoints on this, and some people will hate me for it, but most people, a couple of things with regards to government style, most people, they don't need to know or have an opinion about how the government runs. As long as their life is okay, they shouldn't really be involved. The problem with democracy is that everyone has got to say in something, and you have to, as a government, you have to constantly appease the lowest common denominator. So you're constantly trying to get the vote of the people. You're like a candy shop man. So you're basically giving out free sweets to people to vote for you, when really what you need is your arm chopping off, and you're not going to vote for the doctor that says you need to get your arm chopped off. You're going to vote for the guy that's giving you the free sweets or the extra money, and trying to tax the rich more. And obviously being in Dubai, they've got no taxes. So all the people that are kind of doing well or entrepreneurial, ambitious, and like, well, why am I staying in UK paying for all these fucktards to have, basically be lazy, commit crime and blame someone else for their crappy life? Why should I stay here? I'm going to go to Dubai and make a good life for myself. And I just don't understand why this kind of message isn't properly delivered to people, because people feel like in the UK, they don't really understand that the more you tax someone, the crappier you make that kind of entrepreneurial, ambitious person's life crap. The world's competitive. They can go somewhere else.
Really can.
And it's really happening. Like I see a lot of it here, particularly in Dubai. In Shanghai, we've got so many British people, but here in Dubai, there's loads.
That's right.
Loads. And it's kind of quite close. It's exciting. They've set it up so it's really easy for people coming in. So you look at England now and you look at, or UK now and Dubai, and you think, well, UK is letting in all the war-torn countries and all the illegal immigration and stuff. And it's, okay, you've got to be, we're all humane. We all want people to have a better life. And if they've got a shit life, of course you feel sorry for them and come from a war-torn country. Yes, okay, like one-on-one. But then you compare it to Dubai, which is attracting all the wealthy and the entrepreneurial people and ambition. And you're like, well, which country's going to be better in 10 years' time? It doesn't take a rocket scientist.
They've set it up for a purpose. They've set it up to be a place where you can only come, really, unless you're coming on holiday. If you're thinking about coming here to live, you're coming here because you've got a purpose. Yeah. You're going to have a job. Yeah. You're going to contribute. You're going to buy an apartment or rent an apartment. You're going to add to
not just going to take, which is basically what they come from the UK.
Well, that, again, going back to my dad's story, when he came over to the UK, he needed a work visa. Means that company had to sponsor him. Means that he wasn't coming he wasn't coming to the UK to, try his luck and, claim dole or whatever it may be. He came because he had a job, and automatically he was contributing, in a sector that British people didn't really want to do or know how to do it. So I think that it's actually that kind of philosophy, isn't it? You're welcome here, and from time your employment is over.
I'm really welcome here. Like I've come here and I feel like, because I've lived in Shanghai for quite a while, and I never felt like I could really exist there, because I never really got, I didn't get an ID there. I didn't have a proper address. I wasn't a tax resident, whatever. Here, you register, you buy a home, you set up a business, and you get an ID, and you're part of society.
Yeah.
Right.
But you must remember that you were always a tourist, and I think I would always stress that to people that come over here, because if you keep that mentality that you are actually a tourist with a document, it allows you to ground yourself and not get too overconfident that you can start behaving like you do in the UK. That would be my advice to anybody.
Yeah.
It's all good while it's good, but the minute that if you cross the line, they'll make it very abundantly clear that you're not coming back here again, and I like that. And that means
I like that too.
Yeah, no, I don't.
I think humans, they need something to be fearful of. Otherwise, you just become feral, don't you?
You do.
I mean, you only have to watch that famous movie, Lord of the Flies, where all the kids are left on the island, and within a couple of days, the kids are killing each other because there's no rules. So that's basically what happens it's not just England, it's the West, basically. UK and America are the worst of them because, just of our kind of setup. Europe's kind of along the way. But comparatively speaking, as a reasonably wealthy person that wants to do business, I just will not go back to UK.
No.
There's no point. I just don't want to do it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about COVID actually. So you obviously been in the hospitality industry for a long time. When COVID came along, you were here, but all your businesses were only here in Dubai during that time, or?
I'll tell you. So maybe a year and a half or so before COVID, I left the employment that I had. When I came over here, I attempted to put a business together. It didn't work out. It was my first time. We ran out of money, and it never finished. And at which point, I then was approached by quite a big hospitality company out here that had some venues, and they were wanting to do more. And
was that the Bulldozer?
Correct. Yeah. So I joined them as ops director. And at that time, they had a couple of clubs out here and a few restaurants. They were the ones that brought Novikov over here originally. Doesn't exist anymore, but they were already doing things in hospitality, and they had big plans. So they were looking for a GM for the Movida site, and I said to the boss, "Look, I'm kind of gone and done all of that, but I understand that we don't know each other. And I'm happy to do it just to show you, let's say, what I can do. But then I think that I can be much more use to you in growing this company rather than doing that." And that was it. So the club was already, let's say, pretty much on its way out. They had already enjoyed 4 or 5 years of great times.
Which is a long cycle for a club.
When Movida opened in Dubai, and at that time, there was money flooding in here like anything, and they did very, very well. And then they opened up VIP room, concept from south of France originally, and also did very well. So I came in towards the back end of it. We did do something. I managed to correct quite a few of the things that had, unfortunately happened. That happens due to time and due to, the same people being involved in the same business for so long. We managed to turn it around a little bit, and so then I got my hands on the VIP room, and I suggested them an option because VIP room was over 2 floors. And the rents were quite heavy, and the times were different. Again, VIP room had probably 5-6 years old by that point, and the other places had opened. People go and find a new spot. So Bulldozer were really in a they were quite happy to actually give the keys back to the landlord and say, we've had a good time here, and it's maybe time to go and think of something else. And by careful planning and understanding what we could do or not, I basically went to the hotel and I said, nice to meet you, but we're going to give the keys back. And they didn't like that. They didn't want us to go. So we, through a friend of mine that had the rights to One Oak at the time for the UK, I knew that he was looking for something over here, and we ended up doing a deal, long short of it, where One Oak ended up taking over the ground floor of what VIP room had. And there was another Lebanese group that I had actually done a few nights with at Movida at the time, and they had some brands in Beirut that I knew that they were bringing over, and ultimately structured it so we had 2 venues in one. We created a new staircase going up, and that's Seven Sisters, which is there now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was an interesting thing. We also created a terrace there, so we did quite a few things. When it came down to COVID, though, so fast forward now, I had left Bulldozer because I had sent my wife and kids over to Barcelona. They were in a tennis academy over there, too young to be left alone. So we made a tough decision as a family that, this is good for the kids. This tennis academy doesn't exist here in Dubai at all. Otherwise, we wouldn't be looking to get out. And my partner had just taken over the windmill in the UK, and they were going through this whole refurbishment.
On the strip club, the windmill.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, I used to go there. Don't tell her I've been there a couple of times.
So that now, I don't know when the last time we went to London, but now that's a beautiful venue. Spent many millions on.
What was the name of the guy that was running it? Wasn't he had a son that was running it?
Was it Oscar?
Oscar? Yes, it was Oscar.
Oscar.
Yeah, he was quite eccentric guy, wasn't he?
Yes. Well, they had some problems, and they ended up, that strip club.
It closed, didn't it? Yeah.
Well, it got shut down. Stuff was going on there that shouldn't.
Yeah. Nothing to do with me. I no experience. Don't know anything about that.
So that was going through refurbishment, and I said, look, I need to do more, because it got to a point where I knew that I wasn't able to sit with the boss and do stuff together. I was always going to be the employee, right? And I knew that I'd already had my own places, and I felt that it was time for me to revisit that again.
Yep.
So that was it. So I ended up joining forces with the majority shareholders of One Oak, and the plan was I would carry on looking after that. I would go and oversee the refurbishment of the windmill in London, and then on my way back, stop in Barcelona, see my family, and then come back to Dubai. So that was that. I had planned that. I was in London during COVID because of that venue, and I said to my wife, I'm coming over for the weekend. I didn't know, but it was the last flight, and I was there for 5 months. And during that time, actually, I must say it was, although it was very worrying because we had to close Dubai, we only had One Oak at the time, and the concern was, look, the clubs are going to be the first thing to close and the last thing to be able to open. No, at that point, thought it was just 2 weeks, or where no one knew what was going on.
It's kind of like the least important thing for people, isn't it?
Yeah,
the clubs.
Well, I mean, when you're told you can't be next to someone, I mean, what good is a club, right? It's the worst thing. I mean, somehow you understand that if you can sit at a certain distance from someone, then a restaurant's going to have some kind of chance to succeed. Even if it's delivery of food or whatever it may be, you can see that there's a bit more of a chance in a restaurant environment than a club. I mean, that's just, a club doesn't work unless you're just stuffed next to each other. So that got me thinking about creating a restaurant. Right? And the reason why I was able to think creatively during that time is that ultimately I became the teacher of my youngest daughter. And I kept structure. We wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I would make breakfast. I would follow her through our online school. We would do some fitness. I kept a routine, which kept me sane during the time of when, let's be honest, it was super unpleasant for everybody. And although I had in the back of my mind, like, what am I actually going to do? Like, obviously we're 1 month in, 2 months in. How am I going to feed my family? This is what I do. So I have to start thinking about a new career now. So after some very tough conversations, I said to my partners, look, we can't just, because it was closed. The hotel wanted to charge us rent. They didn't want to, but they said, look, we're getting no support from the government. And this is where this country, let's say, worked in a different way than in Europe. In Europe, from what I understand, they were giving grants, they were giving some support. They were, there was some percentage of your salary was coming,
which everyone is paying for now in massive inflation, basically.
Okay, but at the time when you don't know where your next meal's going to come from, and you've got somebody you don't think about what's going to happen a year or two down the road. You think about that moment. And here, everybody panicked because places were closed. No one was getting paid. And you know how it is. You get kicked out, and then that's that. So it was very, very tense. And I said to my partners at the time, look, give me some time. We can turn One Oak into a restaurant lounge. That's going to have more of a chance to open than a club.
Yep.
And if we let go of people now, we're going to have to pay them their severance. And that is going to be this amount of money, because we had already done the calculation. If you let me have half of that money, I'll make sure that we keep the team just fed and watered and just the basics. Like, no one's looking to make any money out of this, just to survive. Let's see how we go. You know what? That was the best thing that we could have done. We opened the end of the first week of August again, after having spent some money on a trade license and keeping the whole team, whereas all the other clubs had fired everybody.
Yeah, because you couldn't have rehired that staff that quickly.
Couldn't have rehired it. So when we were able to open again, we did. We had all the team. Everyone was energized. And let me tell you, August, September, October, November, December were the best. We corrected the 5 months that we were closed in those months. Yeah, it was the best year we had. So I think that a lot of the good that has come out of it is me just trusting myself. I think that's sometimes people have an idea and then they get dissuaded from doing it, or maybe not, maybe you're right. But sometimes if you just go with your gut and you're tenacious enough, you get it. And I've been visualizing things all the time. I mean, I could tell you some really funny stories. I mean, now where I find myself now, Tàn Chá, the Chinese restaurant that we've opened, was born out of COVID. It was born out of this desperate position that we're in, where, guys, listen, we can't just, if this happens again, we're going to be in a real mess. Like, we got away with it this time, but if it's happened once, it could happen again. So let's diversify a little bit. Let's open a restaurant. There's a site next door. I know it very well because it used to be GQ bar when it was the VIP room days. I think that we could do something there. So then that got me thinking, like, okay, how am I going to approach the hotel? What venues are currently operating there? What cuisines do they have? And I narrowed it down. Chinese doesn't exist. Okay, Chinese food, small bites, a fork or a chopstick, alcohol, because I knew that music and alcohol had to play a role in it, because that's my background. So then that's where it started. So when I came back, we set the ball rolling on creating Tàn Chá, and 3 months after we opened, we were, recognized on the Michelin Guide here, which was just like amazing. As for many ways, I can thank COVID times. It allowed me to spend 5 months with my wife and kids that I don't know if I've ever spent 5
Wouldn't get that time again.
No.
And also, like, when you've got children, I don't have children yet, but I really want them. I guess you have a greater purpose, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So things become like, it's not a question of, can I do it? It's like, I got to do it.
Must. There's no other.
Yeah. So there's no like hesitation about it. And also, I think a lot of the things that I find these days is through the difficulties comes the greatest rewards. When things are the hardest to do and you're really difficult moments and you get through them, or you make a success of it, they're the biggest when you feel the best. That's when you get the most kind of like, I feel really content with what I'm doing.
Right. Absolutely.
And I kind of like do a lot of that stuff with my life now, like, living in Shanghai for all those years, I was partying a lot, drinking a lot, and, you know, fucking great time, you know, whatever. Got girls everywhere, whatever. But it's not actually that fulfilling. Like, the fulfilling part is doing things that are difficult. Like, for instance, I've quit drinking. That's difficult. I still find it difficult to this day, because I want to have a glass of red wine, you know, a bottle of champagne or a gin and tonic with my friends. But not drinking is like the discipline part. And making that sacrifice makes you feel like, you know what, I'm making a sacrifice, therefore I deserve better. And when the good things happen, you feel good about it.
Yeah.
I feel like I deserve that because I've put myself through. I mean, obviously it's not as difficult as, you know, trying to run a business through COVID, but it's like an idea of like those kind of differences between the difficulties and the success, which is a lot of what I try and focus my life on now.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I've moved here, because I was having a good time in Bali, just playing golf, having a great time. And I'm like, no, this is why I want to be in the mix. I want to be like fighting. I want to be struggling. I want to be against against some big boys. I want to be competing with these guys. You know, and you're not going to get that in Bali, but in Dubai you get it because everyone here is here to make money.
Right.
And that's what I like about the place. So, all right. So we talked about moving to Dubai and the comparisons between UK and Italy, and we didn't talk much about Italy, but kind of Italy. And you didn't.
No, I didn't. I mean, I'm an Italian passport holder. I never lived there. My father, as I said, was Italian, but
Did you go back or you visit?
just for holidays.
You speak Italian as well.
I do, yeah, and Spanish, and my wife's Italian. So yeah, I don't really have a great deal of family left. Lost grandparents many years ago, so there was no real reason to go back. And plus, I never really had holidays. I was just working. Even through the summer here, it was a great moment because, as you know, Ramadan comes 10 days early. But when we arrived, it was sort of like in the middle of the summer, so the club was closed. And I let everybody go on holiday so that I could try to strategize what the new season was going to look like. So it was a perfect time for me to stay. So in fact, I never actually went on holiday. And if I did, it was just for a few days here and there.
Do you plan to stay in Dubai during the summer as well? Because it gets pretty hot, doesn't it?
We always did. This last summer, we took a road trip to Italy. So we caught up with some of her family, my wife. And I enjoyed that. But I have no problem being here. I actually quite like the quiet, because a lot of people do go, and it does gives me that moment to understand for us now restaurants, you know, the season really does kick in from September onwards. So yeah, it gives me that moment to reflect on where we've been and try and put some interesting things together for the new season.
Is that July and August, so that I know, because I'm planning my year this summer. I'm thinking about going somewhere for summer. It's July.
There's quite a mass exodus during that time. Once school breaks up, most of the wives and kids disappear, and then the partners follow. But yeah, that does tend to be the moment. Then of course it's too hot. The outdoor life shuts down here. Terraces are closed. Beach clubs are done. Even though there are still people coming on let's say cheaper holidays, the pools are chilled. So it's not like you could comfortably stay inside the water. It's just the humidity, I think, more than the heat, is the big issue in the summer.
Okay, so let's do a little bit of advice for the young people that are thinking about moving out to Dubai and starting a business, maybe in hospitality. What advice would you give people that are looking to do something like this, given your years of experience in the industry? Don't say don't do it.
No. I've had and I've not been that guy. For me, clubs was an entry into paying bills. It wasn't because I wanted to chase girls, or it wasn't because I wanted to snort that, and it wasn't because I wanted to drink that. That was never part of my DNA. So it was always business for me. And I would say that you can do very well by just staying in the simple things. Just stay in your lane, put your head down, and work hard. Someone will notice what you're doing, and someone like me will give you an opportunity, because we've had commies that literally have been working with us and started with very, very basic knowledge and just sweeping up after people and cleaning the tables. And they've gone through the process of training, and now they're senior waiters for us in restaurants that we've got. I mean, that's a wonderful journey. And I think that those kind of tales you can tell.
And those kind of traits that you value there is kind of loyalty and hardworkingness, or what are the traits you look for?
Well, look, I try to lead by example. I try to let people know that I'm not telling you to do something that I either haven't done or won't do with you. And I think that people warm to that rather than just pointing and saying, right, you do. And that kind of, I think that for the most part, unless you really do take advantage, we're all in this together. They don't work for me. We work together for a cause, and I make them feel like they're a part of this business and that its success means that we all benefit from it. And that's why we've, even in you think here, Dubai being such a transient part of the world, we've had people, and yesterday we celebrated 5 years at One Oak, as I said, we've had people that have been there with me from day one. And that's not normal in Dubai, especially with the amount of venues that open all the time and the amount of money more that people get offered. I think that it goes a long way if you just treat people well. You make them feel that they're a part of something, and you just treat them with respect. I mean, these are just basic things. I don't know why everybody doesn't do it. There's no science to this. But if we've managed to keep a team together and work towards a cause and be successful, because 5 years, I think One Oak is actually the oldest indoor nightclub of its type right now. I mean, that's just testament to the team that we've got, because nothing's really changed. We opened a hip hop club. We will end a hip hop club. We haven't moved the trends in music or style or it's been a quiet week, let's go and work with every promoter in the city. We've held strong, and together as a team we have got to where we are. So
compared to 5 years ago, how has kind of like wage demands changed in Dubai?
Actually, we can go further back. I think 10 years ago, they were still on the wave of looking to hire big corporates from around the world and make it interesting for them. And make it interesting to them would be, big salary, house paid, car paid, school paid, right? So whatever you were earning was ultimately for you to save. That's changed, definitely. I think that people have either, they invested in that at the beginning in order to create an appeal, and people are now just coming to Dubai understanding that that's maybe not there. Wage demand, I would say, look, everybody wants to do better, but in my experience from the guys that I've got around me, and I know that they probably could have left 15 times or 20 times already, I do believe that people are valuing more the human side of things rather than maybe an extra little bit of money, but I don't know where I'm going and I don't know whether I'm going to get it, because it's all good saying I'm going to get paid this at the end of the month, but there's lots of horror stories here of, unfortunately, things opening or looking like they're going to open and they don't even make it. There's a lot of people that...
That's an industry thing though, isn't it? This have always been like clubs are notoriously kind of dodgy in that kind of way, aren't they? Like, especially as investors, I've always felt like, no, I've not been as involved as you have because I've just been a DJ, so I would just turn up, get my couple £100 or whatever and go home, and it was like the easiest kind of connection to a club ever because I've got no responsibility. But when I was in China, I was kind of closer to the guys that were owning it, and I invested in one club, and it was a disaster. I lost all the money because the guys operating it weren't honest about what they were doing.
No,
basically. And as an investor, you're the first to lose the money. So I always felt it's better just to be the operator so you know what you're doing. So I guess that passes on to the people that work there as well. They get the same kind of treatment sometimes. So to have like a really good reputation in that industry, I guess, is important.
Very much so. Yeah, I think that has definitely helped me over the years. People come that I don't know, but they say, "Oh, I've heard. I know how you operate. I've heard. I worked with this person who worked with you 15 years ago." And it's helped. And I just try to stay true to that, and I won't bend or flex. And even though, you know how it is. Sometimes you're nice to people, and they take advantage of you. But it hasn't changed me. I always say to myself, "Oh, I shouldn't have been so trusting there." But I still can't change my character. I am what I am, and if you screw me over, then you lost. And I keep telling myself when these things happen, all for a reason, and that helps me get over it quickly and just move on.
It's quite very stoic of you.
Yeah, no, I guess
that's good. I tried to practice a lot of that stuff and watch some of the writings of Marcus Aurelius, who's the guy that kind of like the forefront of Stoicism. But it's a very interesting kind of idea to try and not be affected by things that are kind of outside of your control. Not to worry about, not let them affect your mood or the way that you think or the way you operate.
I'm a firm believer in that.
So I have a funny story actually I wanted to share with you. It just came into my head because I was thinking about Aura, which is the club that you, when I first came to Aura, I was very young, and I think was Aura was open at the same time as China Whites, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah.
It was, because I remember going there and there was a guy that used to work on the door, massive, Vitalik or something.
Yeah, yes.
Is that him?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
He was an absolute nut job, that guy. They were always like terrifying when you go in the front door. But I remember getting to know him a bit, and he was just like really nice guy. It was like, hey, how do you put those two things together? But I wanted to ask you about the kind of the nightlife and trying to keep health and how you stay in shape. And because obviously you're working late, you're a night owl, you've got to be surrounded with people that are drinking all the time. How do you deal with that? Because I spent a lot of time DJing drinking. I totally quit drinking before. I don't really do drugs. I don't do drugs at all. Apart from recently, I took ate some kind of cookie or something in England with my girlfriend. I was like, I ate too much. And the only other time I took drugs was in Aura by accident. Someone spiked my drink.
Oh,
yeah, but it was my friend.
Oh,
yeah, it wasn't like a bad thing. Someone did it deliberately. They spiked me.
Ouch.
And but I basically booted the bongo man off the bongos. Remember the guy? You remember the guy with the long hair? What was his name? I can't remember his name. It was really good at the bongos. I basically booted him off and I bongoed for like 8 hours straight. And I woke up in the morning and my hands were bloody and I was like, what the hell is that? I can't believe that happened. But so how do you deal with like keeping kind of healthy body and healthy mind at that time?
Well, I've already said I don't drink, I don't smoke, and I didn't do anything else, and that's been that pretty much all the way.
You don't drink at all either?
No, I mean, if I have a shot of something or a drink of something, it's only to please you. It's not to please me. I don't. I mean, yesterday someone said, "Come on, it's your birthday, have a shot." Okay, so I had a shot.
Yeah.
But I don't regard that as drinking.
Yeah.
I certainly don't do it. I mean, that probably would happen once every 3-4 months or something like that. I just don't, and it's not for anything. I just don't enjoy it. I never have. I always like to stay in control of what's going on. So I think that played a big role in me being able to survive.
Separate yourself from the...
Absolutely, yeah. Plus, I was young when I started all of this, and I unfortunately saw many times when ambulances were called for people and vomiting all over themselves. And I mean, I was just a mess, and I just didn't want to have anything to do with that. I was quite heavily into sports. I got injured quite badly when I was 16, 17. So I even in the young years when others were going out, and it wasn't because my dad used to enjoy a glass of wine. My mum also, mum and dad used to smoke when I was young, but it was just something that it never pulled me to it.
Yeah, then smoking was kind of like, it was because people weren't really educated about. Yeah, they didn't even think it was bad. So it was fun, right? No one even knew.
You didn't smoke if you didn't have any money. Yeah. It wasn't for any other reason. Yeah. If you didn't have money to buy cigarettes, you wouldn't smoke. But other than that, you would. Yeah.
Both my grandparents, my mum's side, they died like 50 years old from lung cancer from smoking like 100 cigarettes a day or whatever the bloody hell they were doing. But no one really knew it. Like, thankfully now people understand that it's bad and that they're making that choice, aren't they? Like, okay, you still smoke, but at least you know that it's bad.
And it's written on the packet now, isn't it? I mean,
it's a massive bold thing, a massive picture of your horrible lungs that are going to collapse if you don't get it.
I don't sleep a great deal, and it's not for anything other than it just feels to me like I don't need to sleep much. I don't often get past 5 hours, and it's not because an alarm clock goes off or I'm trying to be a hero or I force myself out of bed because I want to be proactive during the day. My eyes open and I feel like I've had enough. And I try to get to the gym. I try to start my day.
Still hitting it hard?
I wouldn't say hard. I would say, look, it's more than anything, it's maintenance. I mean, I'm nearly 50 now, so I'm in a couple of months. No, I feel all right. I feel all right. It's more than maintenance rather than anything, but I enjoy it. It gives me purpose, and I do like still, filling up a shirt a little bit. And if I notice I haven't quite been going as regularly as I could, and that shirt.
It disappears quicker though, doesn't it?
That was very quick.
Yeah, because I'm 3 weeks away from the gym because of a back injury, and I'm already feeling like, I need to go like right now. I'm hitting that gym down there called Revel, which is like a CrossFit, but like more heavy weights CrossFit, and I love it. I just think it's so good. I turn up, I don't have to think about anything. I get in there, someone shouts at me, and I just do whatever they tell me to do for 50 minutes, and by the end I'm just like completely dead. And I do that 4 times a week, and that's just like amazing fitness for me. So I'm loving it, and I've also been doing ice baths for a long time.
Oh yes, I've seen that you've been doing. I've done that a couple of times. Yeah, I know that they're very good for you. Yeah,
not thought about doing it more, or it's got to be a convenience thing. I've set it up so it's a convenience thing for me.
Right.
I've actually got one coming. I thought when the doorbell rang early on, it was going to be that massive fridge, and I was going to have to sorry mate, I'm going to need 20 minutes to get this in, but it was just the guy waiting for money. But that's coming today or tomorrow. It's a big chest freezer, like 2 meters by 1 meter, or whatever the size is, not 1 meter, but maybe 0.8 meters. And you empty everything out and you seal everything inside with a water silicone sealant. You fill up with water, put a little filtration system in it that gets rid of the oils and the hairs or whatever when you're in it, and you just turn it on and it freezes the water in there. And obviously you have some kind of temperature control, so it doesn't turn it to an ice block. It turns it off when it gets to like 2 degrees or something. And I'm just going to stick it on my balcony. So I have it every morning. I can get in there and just do it like 3 or 4 minutes, like first thing, get in, or after, because you can do it for a couple of different reasons. You can do it for recovery from the gym. You can do it for a mental, like kind of doing something difficult first thing in the day.
Yeah.
Gives you a win, an early win. Like first, people say even if you just wake up and make your bed, it's like a win early in the morning and sets you on the right path for the day, right?
True.
So doing an ice bath, no matter how often you do it, you still never want to get in when it's there and you're looking at it and the water is like, fucking God, I don't know, what am I doing with my life? But as soon as you've got out, it's the whole world is just, your oyster. You're like, fucking let's go, let's have it. And so I think making it convenient for you. And in Bali, I had that set up really well. So I'm trying to replicate that here. Obviously, it's slightly different because I'm in an apartment that have an outdoor space. I don't have my assistant set up, so I'm kind of a little bit disjointed, which is one of the reasons why we haven't done this podcast for 3 or 4 weeks or so, because it's just been so difficult for me to settle myself. So you're the first guest on the podcast for 3 weeks. I did one with a guy called Luke Nolan when I first came to Dubai. And he was the founder of student.com, extremely successful guy, like is a big tech company doing selling students housing to different countries. So when you go to London, you can find where you want to live, this kind of thing. And I knew him from Shanghai. He's into super ultra marathon stuff now. Oh. So he does, I'm going out, so I'm just going to do a quick 50K. I'm like, it's like completely mad, mate. What is this?
At that level.
Yeah, he's like totally addicted to it. So I don't know. Okay, so what's next? What's the plan? Where are you going now? What have you got? Any like big plans, or have you got?
Look, it's a good question. I'm not trying to think that far ahead. I think for now it's understanding what the kids are going to be up to. So both of the kids are enjoying tennis. I don't know where it's going to go. We opened this tennis academy now. So
when you say you open it, you're part of.
So again, during COVID, when the kids were over there, I spent quite a bit of time at the academy because that was one of the first.
Oh, I thought it was someone else's academy. It's something you set up. Oh, congratulations. Okay.
Yeah, we set it up at Repton School. So the kids used to go to Repton before they went off to Spain, and during those 5 months where I managed to catch some creativity, actually out of desperation, as we discussed, because we had a club. Now what are we going to do? We need to start doing other things. I was like, well, why doesn't this exist in Dubai? Why doesn't it? Why doesn't this? Because the facility was very clear. They had their own school. They had their own boarding. They had their own tennis courts. They had their own physio. Everything was there. And a true academy, not tennis clubs that we have here. Because a lot of people call themselves tennis academies. But for me, if there's no education linked to it, then it's not a true academy in any of the sports. So I spoke to the owner. And he said, I've been offered, by a few people to go over there. But, we need to be able to pick what we've got up here and drop it over in Dubai. Now, that's massive. I mean, they've got like 26, 27 tennis courts, their own school, as I said. So, I mean, the infrastructure and the investment that something like that would need would be just, it doesn't even make sense to go looking to raise it because already when we came over here 10 years ago, there was a waiting list for the good schools. And now pretty much you can get into them. I mean, there's more schools, there's more people, but there's more schools. So to start thinking about creating our own school was not an option. But I ran with it just to understand that I had, maybe an opportunity to do something like this. And when I got back, I went to Repton and they've got, it's the biggest school in the UAE, 2,000 kids. There's a real captive audience there. They had outdoor land that they had a couple of football pitches on, and somehow managed to let them understand that one of those football pitches could be some nice tennis courts there, and that why not? My kids have left here because of this. Can't be the only one, and they went with it. And we opened a few weeks ago, so we've got 9 tennis courts there. Phase 2 of the project is a big structure with a polyclinic in it, so all the rehabilitation stuff that would go with looking after future athletes. That's a really exciting project and very different to what I've been doing before, but ultimately they're all linked. It's about making people feel good and having a purpose. And I think that once you've got that in your head, once you've opened clubs successfully or a restaurant successfully or a tennis academy, then, you can go into other fields. And I remember actually one story, there was a guy actually out here who used to be in hospitality in Amsterdam, in a big way. He had his own restaurants and stuff like that. And he was approached by a big watch brand, and they wanted him to run a store. And he said, but I don't know anything about watches. I mean, it's so different to what I've been doing before. And I remember, I'll never forget it. They told him, learning about watches, we can teach you that. What we can't teach you is how you've been dealing with people over the years that you've been dealing with them, making them feel good, making them feel welcome, making them feel that they want to come back. This is more important to us as brand owners than you knowing about movement in a watch that we can teach you. So I think that transfers very
interesting. Yeah. Okay. So using those skill sets in other industries is quite good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I imagine that kind of industry as well, working with children, is like really quite rewarding.
Very much so. I mean, I've seen how my kids are. They're still to 12 and 15, so they still, find their way. But they get up in the morning, 6:30 they're in the gym. 8:30 they're in the tennis courts, and they do this on every day. They get themselves up, they make themselves breakfast, and they're focused on it. I would want other parents to be able to have an opportunity to do that and not have to think that they have to move country in order to find that. And we've done it. So, yeah, it's becoming quite popular. In the last few weeks, we've had quite a few sign-ups. It's for adults as well. It's a really nice facility. It's a big school. It looks like a Harry Potter. Maybe look into it after.
I'll get them to put up on the screen. I'll get them.
Yeah, it's really, really nice. And we'll send you some photos of the tennis courts there. We've used a system for the flooring called Green Set, and it doesn't exist here in Dubai, and it's actually the same flooring that's used in the Australian Open.
Mm-hmm.
So it will be great for professionals to come over that normally do come to Dubai before they go to Australia to get used to the weather. They can actually play on the same surface that they're going to be playing in, and the Open. So I think that it will grow and it will develop into something very interesting.
Are you any good?
I don't play tennis, and
amazing.
No, it is. Yeah, it's fun. But again, I was just trying to be strategic. When my eldest was 2.5, 3, I saw that she was quite tall compared to the others, and I saw that she was holding stuff with her left hand. And I thought, that's a clear advantage. I'm left-handed as well. So I said, well, let's try and be a bit smart here. Why would I let her just do netball and do a little bit of this, or go and do gymnastics and just do what we all did when we were kids, which is just do a bit of everything in PE, right?
Specialists.
Why don't I just try and be a bit persistent on this one and put a racket in her hand? Then we went through all of those moments. I don't think I want to do it, Dad. And it's all right, and I didn't force it.
Yeah.
But in my mind, it was always like, I'm going to get back to that, right?
Yeah.
And I did. And now, as I said, she's 15 and, loves it and plays it every day. And, she just wants to be a professional tennis player. And I see the struggles also on
it's very competitive, isn't it?
What the mental side of things. It's not even about the competitor. You're competing with yourself. That's the biggest problem. Ultimately, that's your biggest enemy, is yourself.
The emotional part during a game and the amount of effort you have to put into training.
Absolutely. Yeah. Both remarkable what they do. And I don't play, but I've been around it over the years now to understand that that is a really, really tough sport. And those guys that have achieved greatness, which is even top 100 is greatness. So forget about the top 10 or anything else. I mean, that is just immense.
Yeah, people don't understand how incredible those people are, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They're exceptional in almost all parts of what they're doing.
Just so focused. The levels. You play golf, don't you? So I think also on a good day, you could be a champion, right? It's just a question of how focused you are at that time. Can you do it tomorrow? Can you do it the day after? It's the consistency side of things, which they definitely have to work on, these solo sports for sure. But yeah, no, it's good. So I mean, what's coming up? Get back to your question. I think I'm gonna see where we are with all of that. Federica, our eldest, is doing her GCSEs now. Let's see where the tennis goes for her. But for the next few years, 100% is Dubai. I couldn't think of anywhere else I'd rather be. This is home. I think that my wife would like to retire back in Italy, and I see that I understand her. But I think that I'm more inclined to a winter in Dubai and maybe a summer in Europe and enjoy that. But again, let's see what the kids are doing. But for now, it's growing the businesses. We may have an opportunity to put a version of what we've already got in the airport. I'll keep you posted on that. and open maybe a few branches in Abu Dhabi. Maybe the Saudi is, becoming ripe now. A lot of brands.
I've heard a lot about that. Saudi are really pushing and trying to compete with Dubai, and they're trying to.
They are. Yeah. I mean, it's going to take them time, but I mean, here we're talking about the future, right? Yeah. You think about Dubai 20 years ago. You see photos of what Sheikh Zayed Road used to look like.
Yeah,
it's very different now. So I think that why not? If Dubai has got it, I don't see why Saudi can't. So it's definitely here for now. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. Grow the businesses more and watch the kids flourish because they're in an environment that they love.
Pass on the flame.
Yes, exactly. Pass on the flame. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed that, Alberto. Thank you very much for coming on board. It's great again to know you. It's, I love these podcasts because it's so rare these days you get to sit down with someone that you don't really know and just listen to their story for an hour, because it's inspiring. You're just like, okay, wow, you just don't know these things about people. And it's just a great setup, and it's part of the reason why I do this, because obviously this is not a money thing for me. This is just love doing it because I love hearing what other people got to say. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing that all with me, and
pleasure.
I'll let you know the copy, and you can have a listen to it, and then we'll put it all out there.
Thanks, Max. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching, guys.